Hey everyone, Spencer Ryan here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra webcam. Now this is a premium webcam that's designed for high quality streaming and it comes with a price tag of $299. So is it worth it? Let's dive in. So let's talk about the key features of the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra. First off, the Pro Ultra features the largest sensor ever put in a webcam to date, which is a 1/1.2 inch Sony Starvis 2 sensor. What this does is it allows it to capture a lot of light, resulting in sharp and clear video, even in low light environments, which a lot of streamers are in. It also has an f1.7 aperture on the lens, which helps capture more light and provide more shallow depth of field. As far as resolution and frame rate, it can capture 1080p at 60 frames per second and 4K 30. Now some might be disappointed that it's not capable of producing 4K 60, but in my opinion, considering the use case of this, it's really not necessary. And I think Razer understood that. Nobody is streaming at 4K 60 right now, and most of the time the camera is even smaller than the stream itself. This feels like one of those sacrifices of tech spec in favor of raw performance, and I'm okay with that. So how does it compare to other webcams? Well, in terms of tech specs, the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra is one of the best webcams on the market. On paper, it outperforms many of its competitors, if not all of them. The biggest downfall is the 4K 30 frame per second limitation that I just mentioned, but everywhere else it shines. The large sensor and high quality lens provide sharp and clear video even in low light situations. And in terms of features, the built-in privacy shutter that kind of works like an aperture is a nice touch. However, it is one of the most expensive webcams out there, sitting at $299. So if you're on a budget, this might not be the best choice for you. Now, as far as setup and ease of use, it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is plug it into your computer and it should be recognized immediately. The webcam is also compatible with most of the popular streaming and video conferencing software like OBS, XSplit, Zoom, and much more. Now, as far as settings go, the biggest thing to note here is that with this camera, it does perform best when you pair it with Razer's Synapse software, which I know is not a fan favorite. To give them credit, they have been working on it a lot lately, but it still has a ton of room for improvement. Personally, I just lock in my settings for the camera and close the app. Now, of course, most streamers will have their own microphone or headset, but just in case, the Kiyo Pro Ultra does have one built in. The built-in mic is fine for casual use, which we'll get into in a minute, but if you're a serious streamer or content creator, you're definitely gonna wanna invest in a higher quality external microphone. So what do you say we just go ahead and jump into a video and audio test? All right, so now you are seeing me straight out of the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra. This is a direct video feed from the camera that I'm using to record in OBS. You're also hearing me on the Rode XDM100. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch to the in-camera microphone so you can hear what that sounds like. All right, now you're hearing me directly out of the microphone on the Kiyo Pro Ultra. Again, it's not a top-notch quality microphone. Most streamers are gonna have an external mic, but it is there for an emergency situation. The audio's not terrible. I will say that at one point I actually had a stream and I was accidentally using it the whole time and nobody really seems to notice. But just keep in mind that if you're doing like professional streaming or something, you're probably gonna want an external mic. I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to the XDM100 for the remainder of this clip so I can walk you through some of the software settings. All right, now as I mentioned, I have a pretty good scene here. I'm well lit by one key light up here. It's just like a cheap little small key light. I've got some background lights here and the scene looks pretty crisp. I don't know, you let me know in the comments. If I turn this light off, obviously I'm going to be pretty dark. And the Razer can account for that, but that kind of jumps into the segue of the Razer Synapse software, which I'm going to go ahead and jump into and show you what that experience is like. I know it's not a fan favorite. Not very many people like the Synapse software. So I figure I'll just go ahead and jump in and show you what they got going on over there. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and connect to the camera, and it says the camera's current settings are different from the Synapse. Which settings do you want to keep on using? I'm going to click Synapse. Full screen preview here. We've got all of our settings over here to the left. As you can see, we've got camera processing and image settings. Here you've got the zoom, so you can kind of zoom in on my face, which I'm pretty impressed of the quality and the detail that this camera shows, even zoomed in. We're going to zoom back out there. And then you got the focus mode. Now the focus mode is interesting. You can see it's set to autofocus. It's set to face. So AI is basically tracking my face to make sure that I'm always in focus. It's responsive tracking, and the lighting type is set to standard. This should actually be stylized, so I'm going to click that to stylize because we do have stylized lighting. Now, I've had issues with the autofocus lately. This wasn't always the case. This wasn't the case at CES, and it wasn't the case when I first got the camera, but full transparency, lately, I don't know, the autofocus hasn't been working well. So if I take this off of face and set it to standard, it should be able to track objects. And I was having issues with it recently. So for example, if I put my phone in frame here, it's well lit. It should be able to pick up on it. I don't know why it's not. Something is wrong here that's not letting it focus. And I'm not really sure what that is, but I'll kind of show you what it looks like in manual mode. But keep in mind that this is a setting that, or excuse me, this is an issue that I've been recently having. And so that's obviously not good. All right, so here's my camera and focus. I mean, look at the blur and look at the background depth of field there. It looks really crispy, really good. So in an ideal scenario, when you do have good autofocus, I mean, that would be nice to be able to, focus in. Oh, there, it was trying there for a second. Oh, there it goes. All right, maybe it just needed a switch. Looks like it just needed a switch. So yeah, you can see the autofocus there. It's hunting a little bit, and now it's gonna come back to my face. But yeah, just keep in mind that it seems to be like a software thing. I don't know if it gets stuck or what happens. I'm going to set that back to face. And then you've got your exposure settings down here. So I've got it set to 400 ISO and a shutter speed of 1/60th. That's great for 30 frames per second, which is what I'm using here. You can adjust the ISO. As you can see, that makes it brighter. That makes it darker. Standard camera settings. You go really dark if you wanted to and, bump up your key light. But 400 seems to be the sweet spot for me. In the processing window, this is where you get all of your software processing. So we're rocking 4K 60. Again, I did mention that this can do 4K 30. I did mention that this can do 1080 60. So now you can see, well, you probably won't see it at all actually because the YouTube video is going to be exported in 30, but I do have 60 frames per second now. In my opinion, it's really not necessary. I like the 4K 30. It gives me the natural motion blur, and it looks really good. You can set the MPEG quality to, the MJPEG quality to auto or manual. So if I set this to manual, this will give me the maximum quality feed out of the camera, which is pretty close to what we were having before. But look at that depth. That's interesting. I wonder if, let's see. Does the depth of field change based on the quality? I don't know. I feel like it's got a little bit blurrier. It looks nice. Anyways, so yeah. You can set the quality there. Looks pretty good. Oh, I think it actually officially fixated on my face now. So that's good to know. That depth of field looks pretty good. You can turn HDR on, lens distortion compensation, which kind of adjusts for the wide field of view, of course. I don't really keep that on. You got low light compensation. So this is what I was talking about earlier. If it's really dark, you could turn on low light compensation. And then you've got dynamic noise reduction. I keep 3D noise reduction on. This is what it looks like with it off. It's a pretty noisy feed, which is surprising. But also at the same time, like, it is a dark room, so not terribly surprising. And it doesn't look horrible. I just, you could kind of see it in my hat. There's a lot of noise there. So I like to keep that on. But it does take some processing power. Keep that in mind. And then you got your image settings, which is where you can adjust your brightness, your contrast, saturation, watermark. You can mirror the video. So if your camera's on this side, you want to look like you're gaming at the game, you can do that. And that's kind of the rundown of the Razer Synapse software. So what you can do is you can turn off preview and leave this app open, and then switch on over to the camera, and it's supposed to keep the settings. But what I'm finding is OBS tends to, I don't know. I have this weird relationship with OBS where I feel like it takes over all of the settings anyways. With that said, it's not terrible. There's nothing wrong with it. But I feel like the Razer Synapse software isn't being saved or something. I feel like OBS is taking over. But that could be a me problem. To be honest with you, I haven't dove into it a ton to figure that out. And OBS's settings aren't that bad either. The autofocus is a little janky too, so I don't really trust it for autofocus. But actually, I think it may actually be keeping the Synapse settings in here. Because I'm noticing that my face is really crispy and the background's pretty blurred. So just keep that in mind. If you do close the Synapse software and then reopen OBS, it will probably load its own settings into camera. But yeah, that is the audio and video feed straight out of the camera. Let me know what you guys think. Does it look good? You know, this is a $300 camera. But I'm personally very impressed with the quality of the image coming out of this. All right, so overall, in my opinion, the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra is an excellent webcam that's packed with great features and high quality tech specs, but it's a bit pricey. Now, if you're looking for the best of the best when it comes to webcams, this one is definitely worth considering. Personally, I like it just for the simple fact that I don't have to mount and dismount my expensive Sony cameras, and I can put them to use for content rather than just being an overpriced webcam. Plus, this saves me from having to buy a capture card like a cam link. But at the end of the day, you're the judge. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this, and I will see you on the next one.